Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. You have to put up with the rain. I know some people love the sound of the rain, and at the moment so do I. We've had 4 or 5 weeks with virtually no rain, and over the last few days we've now had substantial rain. So everything in the garden's been watered, all the dust has been washed off. It's good stuff. So there are times when rain is good. Right, so that's that. News and stuff. All I really want to do is elaborate on what happened with taking the videos down, because I didn't really give an explanation. I will do now, and I did say there were consequences which I haven't gone over yet. So I'll start off by saying what's done is done, can't be undone. So first and foremost. So my videos where I commented on a certain nursery where some of the quality of their plants was a bit suspect, shall we say. Not all of them, but some of them obviously were. And it showed in the videos as well. The owner got very upset, yeah? That's fair enough, entitled to opinions and all that sort of stuff. But it got all mixed up together, that was the problem. If that would just been a visit by me, everything could have been dealt with what I would call professionally. But the fact that I'd gone there with an Orchid Society, I think the owner assumed that those videos were part of an Orchid Society's thing, and obviously they weren't. My views are my own. Anyway, the complaint came in, that's fair enough. Now, first of all, I'll say what should have happened. If you've got a problem with me, you come to me, okay? Now, if you couldn't find out how to do that, then obviously, as it was a society visit, you go to the person at the head of the society, which was what happened. Now, as a reasonable head of a society, the same thing should have happened. That person should have come straight to me to ask, what's all this about? What can we do to put this right? Or better still, what can you do to put it right? And what I'd have said was, I'll get straight back to the owner, make it very clear that those videos had nothing to do with the society and don't represent the society's views. Apologies if I've upset anybody, I'll take the videos down. Is that okay? And I'm sure it would have been, and that would have been the end of it. However, the complaint was sent round the world, so now everybody knows, and everybody was asked to send their opinions in. I wasn't privy to see those, that's naughty. Yeah, I wasn't copied in, so all the comments that were made about that, I didn't get to see. And quite honestly, the response that went back to the owner used expressions like ignorance and arrogance. And again, that went to everybody. So I resigned, basically. As I said, there are consequences. The consequences are I'm no longer anything to do with Bournemouth Orchid Societies. And to make that point clear, I took down all of the videos to do with the Bournemouth Orchid Society, which is a shame. You know, there were some nice shows that were filmed, competition tables and stuff, but I thought I need to make a clean break now, because this has all turned nastier than it could have needed to be. If the complaint had come to me, it could have been dealt with there and then, quickly, professionally, and everybody would have been okay with it, but it wasn't. So what's done is done, and it can't be undone. So that was that's the end of the saga. It won't be mentioned again. So that's that. Other news, I've told you that the money for... It's getting loud, isn't it? The thing is, I'm relatively close to the camera, so hopefully this isn't drowning me out. Some people probably prefer to listen to that. Anyway, so other news, the money from the house has all come through, so most of the income is now in. I've still got one cheque to pay in, which I'll do early this week, and we've also got a bill to pay that I haven't had the final bill for the council tax, basically. I can't pay it if I haven't had the bill. So there's a few little things to tidy up, and celebrations were done. You know, that was good. We always said we would, and it would be probably this week where the monies would be distributed. But what we've decided to do, because we've got rather a large sum sat in the premium bonds, the draw is monthly and it's at the beginning of the month. So we've decided to leave that money in through the start of June. Who knows, we might be lucky and we might be able to bump up that total by quite a bit. If we draw them out now, we won't be in the draw. So we will be distributing the funds and everything as desired by the four of us, as per the will, probably first or second week in June now. And then that's all done as well. And all the pile of paperwork can go in the box and go in the spare bedroom somewhere out of my sight. So that's that. As it's Sunday, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, it would be very nice if you did so. It wouldn't cost you anything. I don't harp on about that, but every now and again, most channels mention it in every video. I mention it once a week at the most, but it would be nice to have my subscribers numbers climbing. It's the same with the like. You know, if you enjoy the video, hit the like. It all helps. If you want to see more videos, you know, set the notifications. You'll get told when I post a video, but as I post on most days, I'm not sure that's necessary. But you can choose to do so. So that's that. Yeah, that'll do. I mean, thanks to the Patreons that are hanging in there. I mean, that's settled now. There are no new patrons, very rarely, you know, but the ones I've got seem to be staying. So, you know, that's nice. Keep that up. That helps the channel a lot and helps me more than the channel, I suppose. Anyway, that's that. We've got that out of the way. I don't do that in every video. Right, the rest of the Sunday chat today, I was just thinking, have I got any new blooms? And the simple answer is no. Not yet. There's one here bursting. It hasn't actually burst yet. It's bursting. If you grow orchids, you know what I mean, when buds are bursting, but they haven't actually done it yet. So that'll be something for in a week. So unless any of these questions specifically need me to dig a plant out, then that'll be it. Right, now these questions, it's the same as last time. I've put the video up. I've got the laptop is just here on the stand directly below the camera so that I can talk to you and see the screen and read the questions out. Otherwise it's going to get complicated. I've got a special stand for the laptop or projector, whatever. And because I'm close to the door, I can stay plugged in, and obviously the Wi-Fi is strong and everything, so I don't need cables all over the place, so that's good as well. Right, so I'm just starting at the top. These are in the order against the video. So effectively, the latest question will be the first one I answer, the oldest ones will be the last. And I'm watching the time. If this video seems to be dragging on, I will cut it in two, and we'll pick up the rest of the questions tomorrow or something like that. Okay, so I'll read out who posted the question, read the question. Some of these could be one-word answers, some of them are an explanation. We'll see how we go, but we'll see how we go. So the first one coming up is Megan Fletcher. I would love to know how you are caring for your Latorias. Well, not very well, a simple answer to that. And what are your thoughts on them now that you have been growing them a few years? Latoria type dendrobiums are rewarding from the point of view the flowers have a more unusual shape than some of your normal. The sort of dendrobiums most people see are nobly types and phalaenopsis type hybrids. That's what most people see, because you can get them in the normal stores. Latorias deviate away from that. They are tropical plants, they need warmth, and they are best kept continuously growing. They don't need a rest. Unfortunately, mine take a rest because it's enforced on them, because my winter temperatures are too low, it's below their comfort level, and we get the short days in the UK, mine stop growing. So for a period of 3 to 4 months, they're stationary. Too much water, sometimes even slightly too much water during that period, the roots will rot. So these are fragile orchids for me to try and keep going, and I have failed in some cases. Some are doing okay. But to keep them going well, you need that warmth. You need reasonable night temperatures, probably 17, 18 minimum, and then a raise in daytime temperatures, and you need those 11, 12 hours of light. So in the UK, artificial lighting would be a good idea, They don't need high humidity. You can get away with sort of 50–60%, providing the rest of their growing environment is good. So simple answer is I don't grow them very well, although some of them seem to have adapted to the environment and aren't doing bad, and some are not doing very well at all. So that's that. Right, Wanda Shaw. Hello Roger, can you tell us within your collection which genus you find to be the heavier feeders and the lighter feeders? You can virtually say out of what I've got, the cooler, shadier types are the light feeders. The reason is that the majority of those come from cloud forests, which are constantly wet. It's constantly drizzling, mist and fog. They're constantly wet. And what is in that water? Virtually nothing. They don't get much food at all. So they're my lowest feeders. And quite honestly, you can overfeed orchids, and what that will often do is it won't have a harmful effect on the orchid directly, but what it will do is mess the roots about, and too much feed in the media, organic, that's all I use, that's not getting used by the plant will degrade the media quicker. Yeah? So, yeah, I don't feed high. My highest feeders are the Vandas, and I'll have to say the Cymbidiums now, won't I, because I've got two. When I only had one, we could forget that I had that. Now I've got two. I'm not going to be a Cymbidium grower, but they're high feeders, and so are Phalaenopsis. Now that's not from my experience, that's from many, many others' experience. Collective, not just one person saying it. Lots of people have said they will take higher level feed and respond well. As far as Cymbidiums are concerned, at the Mathers Foundation, talking to Jim Durrant, their standards, they're giant ones in a bucket or a dustbin type thing. Some are grown for cut flowers, so they want as many spikes with as many blooms on at all. He said in their heavy growing season, spring through summer, they feed them high, and they feed and water them 5 times a day. He said they are constantly being supplied with nutrients, fresh nutrients and water constantly, and it pumps them right up, and they're often getting 3 spikes per new growth. So it can work. I'll bet that don't half knock Remedia down a bit. Anyway, so yeah, my high feeders are Vandas, Phalaenopsis, and my 2 Cymbidiums. Most of the rest I'd class as medium, and for medium my feed levels are probably lower than others, and then my very light feeders are Masdevallias, Draculas, Miltoniopsis, Restrepias. That's that then. Right, you have to excuse me straight, I'm used to a really big screen and now I'm back on the normal laptop screen, I'm squinting here. Right, Sommer Fuglen 01. If I pronounce these wrong, tough. Time to mess about. Hi Roger, here's a question for you. Well, yes. Are there any orchids in your collection that genuinely surprised you in some way after you started growing them? Yeah, I'd say there's quite a few that surprised me by not growing as well as I expected them to. There are a few that grew better than I expected them to, but they're on the lower list. So most of the surprises have come from orchids that I expected to do reasonably well because they sounded like they suited my environment and just didn't. And quite honestly, the Latorias and the black hair type dendrobiums come into that category. I expected more from them, and they don't do as well as I thought because I hadn't thought the winter through. I thought they would put up with just slowing down to virtually a standstill in the winter, but because they're relatively slow growers, it takes them too long to get going in the spring. So by the end of the growing season, they haven't got their oomph, they haven't got their strength back. So, right. So you have to, I'm struggling to use the mouse here. We manage. We have the technology. One from Insa. Couldn't think of a funny question, so I have a real one. Oh. How do you maintain a long root system on your mounts? Our watering schedule isn't that different, and even if I spray daily, I still have failing root tips as soon as they outgrow the mount. The only difference I can think of, well, the main difference is you're growing inside a home in a room. But from what I gather, your humidity isn't low like it would be in a normal house because of the sheer number of orchids and mounts, and you water them. So you're generating a humidity just by watering your mounts, sort of thing. I notice out here, after I've sprayed all my mounts, my humidity goes up 10%. Some of that's on the floor, some of it's all over the plants, and it's evaporating into the atmosphere. It's difficult to say why, but some of my roots, once they leave the mount, don't do so well. And all I can say is that probably the simple answer is those plants are not as well suited to a mount as some others. I mean, a Vanda would do well on a mount, it does well on nothing, you know, and the roots don't go. They're suited to that sort of thing. But you get an awful lot of orchids do grow on mossy branches and their roots are in amongst things. They're not really aerial, are they? Whereas we put them on a mount because it's as close to that natural environment as we can do. But once the roots escape, they're in a new world, aren't they? That's the only thing I can think of really, is that those might be better suited in a pot. But then I've had ones that just don't grow in a pot. You put them on a mount and they stunk away. I've had some the other way where they seem to go downhill slowly on a mount and they need to go back in a pot. You have to try, it's trial and error, you have to try these things. Patricia Bronk, my question is on treatment for scale. Flamethrower. Do you still use the bleach method? Why or why not? I used it once and once only, and I used it on my Cattleya types. I will never go near it again. Now, it does work for some people and it hasn't worked for others. Yeah? In my experience, I did it wrong. I used the wrong type of bleach and it didn't get washed off sufficiently, so what was left on there was strong enough to do cell damage, and I messed up my root systems. And in some cases it messed up the base of the plant and stopped the new eyes growing, so the plant just basically failed. So no, I will never go near it again. But I did make a mistake, I did do it wrong. I might have been saying that complete opposite to that if it had worked, but it didn't for me. Okay, but I know some where it's worked well, you know. Carol Sykes, do you still have your Odontoglossums Crispum and Golden Rialto? If so, how did you get them to flower? First of all, we've got to get them to live. Now, can I get at them? Yes, I'll show you these two. My Crispum failed miserably. Bulbs rotted, leaves died, and I ended up with a single bulb that's been sitting there doing nothing for a very long time. We'll have a look now. Can I get at it easily? Just about. Well prepared, aren't I? And Golden Rialto is just there as well, somewhere. Where is it? There it is. Right, so these are two. One is probably the oldest Odontoglossum that was imported to England in the early Victorian days and set off the craze. Now this was Odontoglossum crispum and has now been called Oncidium alexandriae. Well, not in here, it's not. And talking to Jim Durrant, officially he has to call it Oncidium alexandriae, but quietly he said, no, it's crispum, it always has been. Right. Just in the last month or two, that single bulb that I thought was just going to die is growing, and in the pot are a few roots. Now that effectively, you probably can't see it clearly, that is 3 new growths on that single old bulb. Now what's triggered that? Don't ask because I don't know, but it's growing. And for those of you who saw that video before it was deleted, that was one of the plants I picked up to try and buy, and they wanted 75 quid for a plant that looked quite similar to that. No. Right, that's Golden Rialto. Now that grew a pseudo bulb last year that hung in there, no sorry, the year before, and didn't die and didn't rot. The 2 oldest pseudo bulbs are still plump. It then grew another growth last year. Both of those growths were smaller than the originals, but we now have a strong new growth coming out and we have new roots going down in the pot, and we have roots in the pot. So that one's made it. Now my friend Brian, who grows an awful lot of the older odont types, I asked him, because I bought one off of him not that long ago, you remember it was Anna Claire, I think it was called, with gorgeous blooms. That's now got a new growth coming. I asked him, when do you repot your odonts? There was no sort of, well, when the media gets a bit, it was just in the autumn. Brian's a bit like that. Simple answer, no elaboration, you don't need any. I've said in the autumn, you don't need to say anything else. And I think he repots all of them every autumn. I think that's what he does. I didn't go to that level of detail. Right, so yes, they do still exist, and they do seem to be perking up. Ugh, long last. Right. Next is Imjax. That's IM and then JAXS. I'm sorry if I'm saying some of these wrong. The thing is, a lot of people have a channel name that's not really their name, it's something else. But anyway, question is, I saw your post on spray watering and you talked about the Tolumnias and Oncidiums not really growing yet. Do you think the lack of brighter light, like in your last observatory, could be part of the problem? The question's back to front, because I believe that I've got far more light in here than I ever had in the other place, because the other place always had shade netting on to try and keep it cool. Now I don't need to do that anymore, so this is incredibly bright light, and for some of my orchids I think it might be a bit over the top, and we might have to put them on lower shelves. I'm determined to avoid shade netting if I can. But anyway, most of the Oncidiums that are mounted are the twinkle types, and a lot of the reasons they didn't grow as well last year is they're on the old-fashioned zombie moss, as I call it, the dry sphagnum, and it's gone off basically, so their roots aren't growing properly. So they need to be remounted, they need refreshing, they need to go in some nice fresh moss, so that's that. Right, sorry, this is part 2. No, there isn't, that's me. I actually answered that. I shouldn't have. I just, on all the questions that were under that video, I just put noted to say, like, acknowledge that I've seen it. I actually answered that one. So I've answered it twice now. Was it the same answer? Sort of. Right, Julia Sohn, I think that is. Julie Sohn. Roger, you have explained your RO water system very well. I am looking at getting a simple large water tap water filter for my water system, as this will avoid the wastage that is generated by RO units. Have you any experience using this method? It's a one-word answer, I'm afraid, no. I've got two choices here. I either use my RO unit and put up with the wastage, although some of that go around the garden now this time of year, or I use the tap water, and the tap water is incredibly hard here, so I can't. So my choice is an RO unit. Go careful with water filter systems and things that are designed for a house, because they've often got salt as part of the mechanism. So make sure you check what comes out the other end, which is difficult to do before you get it, but I have no experience of them, so I'll leave it at that. Moving on, what have we got now? Camilla Carey. Oh, believe me, Roger, people will always be able to come up with questions. In the original video I said I don't know how many questions I'll get. It depends how many people have got. Okay, here's mine. Will you be getting any more Cattleya types to replace the ones lost with the bleach treatment? Oh, a linked question, I like that. Second question. Will you be filming any of your native orchids this year? Answer to the first question is probably. I'm quite fussy what colours I like on Cattleyas, and they don't always come up. Now the last Cattleya I bought a little set of plants when we went to Wisley for the RHS orchid show. I bought some from Spice Exotic, and one of those was a Cattleya, and it was specifically chosen because of the shape of the bloom, the colour. So yes, it is probable that I will replace some, but there's some that are still hanging on that I'm being very patient with. But yes, there will probably be more cattleyas. I'm not writing the cattleyas off, but they are flipping scale magnets. And will I be filming any of our native orchids? Yes. The chances are one of those trips might be this week. Might be. So weather's broken now, I've lost all the nice sunshine. But a lot of our native orchids have failed to grow properly in the spring because it's been so dry. They're stunted. They haven't come up to normal size, far less flowers than normal. That means there'll be less seed, all that sort of thing. It's a knock-on effect. So, but yes, I will be filming some native orchids. Question, have you seen any evidence of increased mould spores in mixes using cocoa husk and or fibre? I don't use the fibre, I do use the chunks. And the simple answer is no. I had some old bark that got left in a bag for a really long time, and it was very old when I decided to start using it. That got some mould spores on it, and let you into a little secret, probably today, or next time anyway, soon, all of Hannah's Phalaenopsis orchids, she used some old bark and she's got mould growing in her roots on most of hers. They desperately need a repot, so I think the whole lot are going to come down here and get repotted. Hydrogen peroxide on the roots, get them in some new media and see if we can get them growing a bit better, sort of thing, because they're never going to grow well if the media's going, you know. So, and that will be, I'll film that as a separate entity because it's somebody else's plants, which I don't normally do. So that's that. But as far as the cocoa chunks that I use, I don't remember seeing any mould in the pots yet. I haven't been using it that long, don't forget. Right, Danny C. I was wondering about two plants I haven't seen in a while. Your bulbophyllum that was in a huge clay pot on the floor and the Francis Fox. I only have one bulbophyllum left now, all the others were sold on, and it's this tiny little species. And that's the only bulbophyllum I've got. And it grows new growths on every old growth and blooms on that old growth when the new growth is mature. Like clockwork, so you can stay. But that's the only bulbophyllum I've got. No plans for getting any more. I'm happy with that one. I don't need lots. A lot of the blooms I'm not that keen on anyway. What else was it? And the Francis Fox. When I repotted the Francis Fox, I had some rot and I ended up with more than one plant. And they're up amongst the cattleyas. I think there's two up there. And I think one's not doing well and one's not doing too bad. Neither of them are growing, and I don't know which ones they are, so I can't get it down and show you. But yes, I've still got the Francis Fox, it's still here. And with this amount of light now, I could possibly get the thing to bloom as well, because they need a lot of light, those do. Right. Petri Lindstrom. Hi Roger, got a question about cattleya types. Considering feeding strength and frequency in the growing season, and are they prone to burn their roots if feed is about Vanda level, about 300 parts per million? My friend Brian again, who also grows the cattleyas as well as the odonts and cymbidiums, that's his sort of main set. He feeds his cattleyas when in active growth. He uses microsiemens rather than parts per million, but it's about a 2/3 thing. And he said he feeds his cattleyas quite strong at 600 microsiemens, which is 400 parts per million. He grows his more in media than mine would be classed as growing in media, because mine are in the holy clay pots with huge big chunks of bark. So it's nearly all air, you know, so they need watering a lot more often. But then the media doesn't break down. But yeah, most people I know that grow good cattleyas do feed quite strong. In most cases stronger than me. Frequency for cattleyas is geared up to your temperatures and how fast the root base in whatever you put them dries, because they need to dry in between the waterings. Now in an ideal set of circumstances, with the workload that entails, they would be watered and dry each day. That would be brilliant, because boy could you get some nutrients in there. But if you've got a pot that's going to stay wet a week with nutrients in it, that's not ideal, because that's not really what the roots like. They like that quite quick wet-dry cycle, and they certainly don't like to stay wet. And that is based on your temperatures, your light, your day length. So many factors involve how frequent you water them, but the important thing is that they are virtually dry in between each watering, and they've got air around the roots, no solid masses of anything. So that's that. If you overcook feed, some more sensitive roots will burn. They get brown patches all over them and you lose the root tip, the growing tip. It is a type of root burn. But you'd have to be feeding pretty high, and the environment would be such that the cattleyas are not using that feed as well as they should be, so it's hanging around. That's what normally does it. The other thing that will burn the roots is if you've got them in a place where they're getting some sunshine and the roots have feed on them and the sun gets on them before the plant has absorbed it, and it's a chemical burn in that case with the sun on it. So I've had that before, found that out the hard way. And at the time I blamed a certain fertiliser, when in fact it was only partly due to the type of fertiliser. The other part was the sun getting on the roots. Right, orchids at heart. Just a thought, or maybe a topic for a separate video. It's been a while since you discussed different types of mounts and how to prep them prior to use. Cork, tree fern, composite, wholly plastic, stuff found in the backyard. I like these ideas, there's some good ones there. Quite honestly now that I've weeded it all out, the only mounts I've got are cork bark. Very long lasting and holds virtually no water until it starts to break down, which it will do eventually, but you're looking at many years, so your plant can stay there, providing your moss doesn't mess it up. So yeah, the trouble is I find it difficult discussing lots of different things when I don't do them or I don't use them, because I'm just using what other people have said. It's not my stuff. So I probably wouldn't do that in that particular case, but at the moment I only use cork bark. There is going to be an exception though. Once, a fair while ago, somebody got me some tree fern, a little slab of tree fern, which I've yet to use. I will, I just haven't got round to it yet. First of all I've got to find it. It's going to be in the shed somewhere with other stuff that hasn't been unpacked yet. Come on, you've been there 6 months. Ooh, okay. Right, Megan Zeitzman, I think that would probably be pronounced. I hope I'm remembering correctly, but I haven't noticed many paffs or frags in your collection. Is there a particular reason for this? Want to get more, but I'd like to know if I'm likely to kill them. Well, if you do what I did, you will. First of all, I've never had frags. I've never owned one, so no. Paffs I've had. Some didn't do bad, and some never did well, and some just did badly. And I put it down to a genus that just doesn't do well for me. So I haven't got any now. The ones I had that were in a state where they could be sold on were, and what weren't were thrown out. So I haven't got any. At the moment there's no plans to get any more, but that doesn't mean to say I won't be tempted. I've got a new environment now. They might work better, I don't know. It's still the certain types of paffs don't like to get cold, and others do. They don't mind the lower temperatures, but it's finding out which one's which when it's a hybrid. But probably not, probably not. Paul Hoffman, SR, Senior, I presume that is. What is the right colour for Oncidium intergeneric and Miltoniopsis leaves? Totally different for a start. Oncidium intergenerics are just various types of crosses that are more than one genus in the Oncidium alliance. But apart from Miltoniopsis, they've all got reasonably mid-green, bright coloured leaves. If they've got dark leaves, it means they can take more light. That doesn't mean to say you can't burn them, because you can, but they normally, darker leaves, they're better at photosynthesis, they can take more light. If they've naturally got paler coloured leaves, go steady with the light, because you can get pale coloured. I'll show you pale coloured ones, this is a Miltonia. Now, Take no notice of the yellow ones, they're the old ones that are dying back now, and the oldest bulbs. But the newer growths, this is a mid to light green, yeah? And that's about normal for a Miltonia. Can I easily get at one? Yeah, I was just going to say, can I get at one with dark leaves? This is a Shari Baby, which again is, it's got a various mix of things in it. Now these have got dark leaves, so that will take brighter light, yeah? So there's two different light type things. Now Miltoniopsis are a different ball game altogether, and I can't get at them because they're buried, but how you can tell a Miltoniopsis very distinctly, especially the hybrids, they have a silvery grey colour to the green. They're not a normal green, it's a different type of green, probably to any other plant you would have. They are that different. And it's a grey green. That's the only one I can describe. They're buried at the back on a low shelf. I can't get at them at the moment, but they're a grey green colour, and they don't need high light. So there's not a lot of point in giving it to them. You'll stress the plant. If you look away from them, you'll stress them. If you look at them, you'll stress them. They get stressed easily. Right, K Graves. Just scrolling up again. I purchased 2 dendrobiums from a big box store. So it's an expression that we don't have in the UK, but I understand what you mean, sort of thing. They sell everything, you know, chairs, garden furniture, sort of, I presume. If you want it, they've probably got it, sort of thing. But they sell orchids as well, some of them. They're tightly packed in very wet sphagnum moss, and our survey said, the only way you'll get away with that if you've got high temperatures and good light. Dendrobiums again do not like soggy roots. They don't mind being thoroughly watered, but then they need to dry, and that needs to go at a reasonable pace. Not like cattleyas. They need to dry. They need to head towards dryness, not necessarily get there. And tightly packed sphagnum moss does 2 things. Holds water, but if it stays like that a long time, that water's stale. It's been there a while, hasn't it? Yeah? And moss can be acidic, and it's making that water more and more acidic all the time. And the other thing packed moss does is it shuts the air out, and orchid roots need air. Some a lot, some need some. So would this be what you call zombie moss? Probably. If you got it in a store, they wouldn't be using any other form of moss apart from that dried, well, I say New Zealand moss, New Zealand style moss. I mean, there's Chilean moss. It comes from other places. The New Zealand long strand moss is supposed to be the best there is, if you can get it. I usually use a bark sponge rock mixture, reasonable. But think that's too much of a transition. Yeah, transition is a difficult thing to do. What would you recommend? Been looking for suggestions. I grow my orchids in the house with temps about 70 degrees, 21 Celsius, proper money, and 50% humidity. A bit more humidity would be a bonus, but depending on what they are, you probably get away with it to a degree. The transition is a big deal for anything that's not brand new roots. So your existing root system, if you take all that moss off and put it in bark, they'll probably fail. They might not. Sometimes the moss was such a hostile environment for the roots, they go, oh, wonderful, now I'll grow. But not always. So I always say, if you're going to transition, even slightly, wait for new roots to come and don't let those new roots get too big. Because at that point, they haven't decided what media they like, because they're not in any yet. So they're not going to have to transition. They'll go in what you give them. That way, if you lose a fair few of your older roots, or even all of them, you've got new ones to replace them that will accept the media you give them, as long as it's not soggy and not toxic. So that's that. Right. Jean-Pierre Vergever, I think that is, or Vergever, something like that. I'm struggling with black hair type dens. Ooh, is there a club? I'm in it. Yeah, I struggle with those flipping things. Do you treat them differently than other all year growing dens? Well, this is the problem. I'd like to be able to treat them and give them what they want. They need the same sort of thing as the Latorias. They need to be given warm enough night temperatures to be able to keep them going, and day lengths to keep them going. Take away either of those two, or worse still, UK, both, and they slow down to a standstill. And then they don't get going quick enough when the growing season starts to get their strength in. So I don't do very well with those. Alright. Also, when it comes to growing, is light more important than feed, or the other way round? Well, they need both. But I'd always just go on the grounds that most orchids can do with very little food. Providing they've got the right light and they're photosynthesizing well and have some roots to get hydration in, they can go a very long time with no feed at all. They won't grow as well as if they get some, but if you give them too much, you can mess things up in the pot. But yeah, do plants create more structure from photosynthesis or from nutrients? It's a bit of both. The photosynthesis process converts light and stuff into sugars, which help feed the plant. The other nutrients that you chuck in through the bottom do a similar thing, but it's not the same. A plant with no roots can sustain itself through its leaves only for quite a long time, but it won't grow much at all because it hasn't got the stuff that's needed to increase the cells and provide structure. Yeah, that needs the other elements. Yeah, so you can't say one's more important than the other, really. So you need both. My complex Oncidium types grow well, but blooming is poor or absent. That's probably a light issue. I wouldn't say definitely. Trouble is, unless you've got everything involved, and eyes are better than words, you know, you actually see the plant where it's being grown, and you can make a much better stab at, you know, what it might be. But I don't know what light they're getting, and without that, how can I say they need more? Sometimes they're getting too much, and it's stressing the plant, and that's why it's not blooming. So it's you know, a combination of things there. Do you have any recommendation for botanical gardens to visit with good orchid collections? Might be anywhere in the world. No. Kew Gardens springs to mind, but I'm only going to know UK stuff. You know, that's it. And Kew Gardens and Wisley, there's RHS Gardens as well. Those two I know have got good orchid collections. At Kew Gardens you will only see what they've got out in their display areas because their growing areas are private. So that's a different sort of thing. Wisley, most of the stuff's out on display. And a lot of the stuff on display at Wisley comes from Kew anyway, and then it goes back when they've messed it about and all the public have poked it around. I don't get much involved with botanical gardens. Right, oh blimey, it's a long name. Mason Dan Shortley, Fadal, I think that is. The first one should get it if the second one don't. I currently grow my orchids in a sunroom. They are doing great. What do you need to tell me for? I'm a renter, so don't know when I will have to move. Now, we're getting to the point now. Can I slowly, when spring approaches, take my orchids outside slowly to get them used to being outside and change their condition? As the next place I might move to may not have a growing room. Many thanks, Dan from Down Under. Right, I was just going to say this is weather dependent. And with weather dependent, the only thing that's important really is how cold is it going to get at night. That's the bottom line. And if you're going to get low temperatures at night, then you can select orchids that will take it. And you might be able to leave them outside year round with overhead protection so that they don't get drowned every time you get torrential rains. And the worst thing they can get is torrential rain during one day and then it freezes overnight because it will crush the roots. So yes, it's possible, and transition from environments is just a little and not too often. But yeah, depending on where you are, then yes, you might be able to grow them outside. Most of the orchids I've got in here would be dead if I put them outside in the winter. Right, best way of cooling the greenhouse in the summer months. Have a north facing one, does the job a treat. Basically, moving air, large circulating fans, keep that air bouncing around all the time, and within that try and keep the humidity high. Now, very, very fine sprays at the Mathers Foundation, if their temperature reaches a certain point, the whole growing area has little fine jets above it, and it puts out a mist. It's not wet, it's a mist. So the plants aren't soaking wet afterwards, and they say that that drops their temperature 4 to 5 degrees in a very short space of time. So very fine mist can do it. And shading, yeah, so a combination of all of that lot really. But as I said, the best place is to not have your grow room in the sun. That does the job. Certainly does in this country anyway. What is the best media for oncidiums? Oncidiums come in many types. Some of them have very, very fine root systems, and some of them have quite chunky, fleshy root systems. You adjust your media to the root size. So a very fine root system, like some oncidiums, a fine media. On a mountain moss is good, otherwise in a fine bark mix or something like that. There is no best media, but there might be one that's best for you in your environment with your workload and how often you can water and look at your plants. Yeah, so you can't give a straight answer to that really. Laura, oh, my eyes won't focus. I think it's poor. Could be poon. It's one of those two. Laura, anyway. Hi, Laura. Sorry about that. Now, this has been answered by Michael McCarthy, so I will read the question and the answer because I just agree with the answers. There's no point in doing my own. Dendrobium kingianum. I don't like those that much, so I haven't got any. I've had them in the past and bloomed them. So I think that's probably the question. Right. Had this plant for probably 3 years now, and it's old enough to flower, but it doesn't. All it does is make kikis. Is there something that I'm missing in the culture that I don't get flowers? I grow this plant under lights, right? You've got your day length then. And like I said, it grows beautifully and has a lot of kikis. First of all, Dendrobium kingianum does kikis. A lot of the time these are growing on the ground, and those kikis tend to get broken off or knocked off and start new plants. So that is a natural way of propagating themselves apart from the normal route of going down the seed. Yeah? Okay, so kikis is not totally out of order on kingianums. They do that. And there's an awful lot of hybrids out there as well. So, right, Michael McCarthy said, Roger doesn't grow kingianum. Correct. I have done, but I don't now. The only way to get it to flower is to give it a very hard winter rest. No water, unless it's really shrivelling, or feed from around November until the buds appear, usually in February or March. It also needs a cool down at night. A drop down to 10 degrees or even lower, 6 degrees centigrade. Now, where these come from in the higher mountain areas, they're often growing on the rocks and stuff on the ground, and it gets down to freezing. But because they haven't had any rain for ages, they survive it. So they can take cold. And if you want blooms, you need the cold. So that's what you need. Michael McCarthy says at least a month to initiate the spikes. They can tolerate very cold temps all the way down to freezing for short periods, so an unheated garage will work for them, providing they can be given sufficient light. This is always the problem in the winter time, light. Day length, as well as, like, oh come on mouse, behave. So there's a read more that I need to click on. Right, read more. All that said, some kingianum are notoriously difficult to flower. Some plants in the wild rarely bloom and instead propagate primarily through kikis. I can't give a better answer than that. And if it was my answer, it probably wouldn't have been as good. But I am aware that they need the light and they need the cold and the stopping the watering and feeding sort of thing. So whether that will stop the kikis altogether, that depends on the plant. Some are more prone to than others. Right, David Hearsey. Hi Roger, question about winter rest for dendrobiums. I do get a lot of this, don't I? I have a dendrobium aberrans crossed with tetragonum Well, my initial response is that doesn't really need a rest, depending on your temperatures and your day length. Tetragonum wants to be dry until growth is underway, but research suggests Aberrans wants a bit of moisture. These are Latoria types. I'm not sure about Tetragonum, but it probably is, because I know Aberrans is. And again, this is depends on your environment. Now, in my environment, they're going to take a rest because of the low temps and the short days. But I would rather not give them one. I'd rather give them better night temperatures and proper day lengths, and then their rate of growth might slow a bit in the winter, but it wouldn't stop dead like it does for me. And as a consequence, the amount of water they would get would be enough to stop them shriveling. Do not keep roots wet if you've got cold and short days. They'll just rot. So there we go. All right, Tom S. How's the time going? What are we doing here? Video length. I'm going to have to cut this off. We're up to 50 odd minutes now. So I'll do another one, and then what I'll do is I'll pick up from where I left off tomorrow, and I'll do it as a part 2. I mean, I don't know how many's left, but there's too many to do. Right, so where did we get to? Amber Benton. How are your deciduous dendrobiums doing? I have heard that if you water them too much in the winter, they will produce kikis instead of flowers in the spring. Is this a good route to get younger plants to thicken up faster, or is it better to let them take their time to grow? Sometimes you can force some dendrobiums into overproduction of kikis, and as a consequence you can get quite a few new plants to push on, either left on the plant to bulk it up or as separate entities to get new plants going. Some work quite well under that. Some dendrobiums virtually don't. I mean, the Latoria types, black hair types, if you ever see a kiki on them, you've found something very rare. But the longer cane ones, things like a Phyllum, my Nesta, and several others that I've got lurking around, they don't produce kikis very often. My Phyllum does, not a huge amount, but it does produce them. But watering them too much shouldn't really happen, because if they are a winter rester, a true rester, then they should be getting next to nothing. And how near to nothing you can get depends on your humidity level, because if your humidity level is quite high, they will take in an awful lot of moisture through that air and not need much at the roots at all, if any. Now, I can't go to no water at all, like it says in some books and ancient scrolls and runes and all that sort of stuff. So they're always going to get some in my sort of environment. But yeah, higher your humidity and the lower your winter rest temperatures, the less water they're going to need, and they certainly shouldn't be getting any food. Now, if you change that, it is said that you will potentially lose your blooms. But if you're trying to generate kikis, it might work. I'm not saying it doesn't, because I don't really know, because my resting dendrobiums get a rest, so I've never tried it, so it's difficult to say. Right, so that was Amber Benton. I'm going to cut off at that point, pick it up tomorrow with whatever's left. Let me just have a quick scan through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, actually there's only 6 left. You're going to have a long one, blow it. Let's just do it and get it done. You can always watch it in bits, can't you? It seems silly to do part 2 that's only going to be 10 minutes long. Right, so where did we get to, Amber Benton? Right, next one. Ron Clint. Does algae growing in pots cause a problem with orchid roots growing? Does the orchid like it, algae, or not? And if not, what problems does it cause? Now that I've switched to more clear plastic pots, well, virtually all of my stuff's either on a mount or a clear pot, and grow more under lights, I see it more. Doesn't seem to matter what medium I use. Right, algae will normally form around the outside of the pot, which algae needs light. So the quickest way to stop it is shut the light out. So you put your clear pot inside another pot, yeah? That shuts the light out and the algae won't grow. So it won't start. However, if you've got lots of algae in the pot and you do that, you'll kill the algae. The algae will break down and rot and be nasty, and that is a very adverse environment for your roots. So if you've got a heavily algae pot with lots of algae in, the best thing to do is repot it, put fresh media in, put it in a clean pot, and then tuck it inside another pot. So, I mean, a lot of my clear pots are inside a black pot, and those that aren't are because I haven't got round to doing it yet, otherwise they would be. I think I've got 2 or 3 plants in black pots because that's what they were bought in, and I haven't needed to repot them yet. That's the only reason they're not in a clear pot. So algae can do harm. Small amounts around the edge of the pot, probably not too bad. But if it gets on the roots, it shuts the light away from the roots and stops them functioning and will eventually kill the plant. So it's not good stuff. Right, Julie Smart. My question is, what sort of water do garden centres use on their orchids? Do Burnhams, etc. use RO water? I watched Arthur watering once with a hose, you know, giving it out, stand well back or you're going to get soaked, he don't muck about. And I said, have you got big tanks of water or anything? He said, this water comes straight down out of Dartmoor and comes straight out the tap, straight on our orchids. It's great water. So they use tap water because they can. It's basically soft water, it's well filtered through the rock structures on Dartmoor, and it comes out as good quality water, not mucked about with too much. However, that doesn't apply to a lot of tap water. Now, when you get orchids growing in a garden centre that are growing every other sort of plant and house plant you can possibly imagine, they're not really looking after those orchids because they're not there long enough to go downhill. They get them to sell them, they don't get them to look after them. So they're probably just getting the tap water, the same as everything else, hose job, you know. So I can't say definitely that some might be using rainwater, but given the volume of plants a lot of those places have got, I doubt if they could collect enough. We do get dry spells in this country, but I don't know it for certain. But with Burnhams I do. They do use tap water straight down off Dartmoor. I doubt if many do that though. Orchid nurseries, I mean. Right, Holly's 77077. Oh, that's not a phone number. I've only been growing orchids for 1 year and had an oncidium question. How do you manage to only water them fully every 8-ish days? You had mentioned this timing in a past video. That would have been a winter timing, yeah? Time of year. Yeah, day length, temperature, it all comes into it without them dehydrating. I never water to a calendar, ever. I look at plants, yeah? And during my winter times with those very short days and those much lower night temperatures and not very good day temperatures, they're not growing much, so they don't need a lot of water. And given that they like to stay slightly moist, they like to be almost dry, at that time of year it takes quite a long time for the pot to get to that stage. So the frequency is reduced dramatically. This time of year, however, most are pushing out new growths and new root systems. The pots dry a lot quicker because they've got a much longer day to be growing in and the temperatures are better. So I water more frequently. So it changes as the year progresses. And the weather. We get a lot of dull weather, then I'm not going to get the daytime temperatures, so it'll take a little longer for the pots to dry. So instead of perhaps being 3 or 4 days, it might be 4 or 5. It's never a fixed thing. Yeah. Right, what else? I have mine in clay pots. Right, well, they're going to dry quicker in a clay pot. It evaporates through the pot. Yeah. 60% humidity, good. 75 degrees Fahrenheit, means nothing to me. A combination of bark and sphagnum moss and grow lights. That all sounds fine for oncidiums. Just remember that if you're going to keep your plants reasonably moist, which suits a lot of oncidium types, the sphagnum moss doesn't last forever. Once it starts to go, it'll start taking your roots down. So your repotting frequency needs to be, I would say, made notes of. You need to say for each plant when it was last repotted so that you know when it's due, without waiting to see the roots fail to find out. Yeah, so that most lots. My pseudobulbs shrivel terribly if I don't properly water. Misting doesn't count every 3 or 4 days. Misting is not normally enough to water a plant. It'll stop it. It'll stop the effects of low humidity causing problems with the plant, but you're not going to get enough water in through the leaves. They have healthy roots. I must be doing something wrong. Either your roots are not functioning properly, because this is it's a problem that occurs with an awful lot of people, especially when they're relatively new. They see their pseudobulbs starting to shrivel, so they water the plant, thinking it needs water, and possibly have failed to appreciate that it's already soaking wet. And the reason that the pseudobulbs are dehydrating is because the roots aren't functioning properly. So there's either not enough of them, or they're in a media that's not suitable, and they're degrading, so they're not plumping the bulbs up. Yeah, normally that's watering too often. You know, I don't use the expression overwatering, because you can't really. If you've got a reasonable media, you can chuck a gallon of water through the pot. It'll only retain that little bit. Doesn't matter how much more you throw in, it'll only retain that little bit. Yeah, but if you then water it again the next day, and again the next day, and again, it will retain a lot more and stay wet too long. Yeah, and you shut the air out as well. So yeah, check that you're not giving the plants water too often, or that your media's possibly breaking down and holding that water far too long, and in which case it's probably going acidic. That's going to knock your roots, and if your roots are knocked, they don't function properly, and your bulbs start to shrivel, even though your pot's wet. So it's a vicious circle. Right, also love your channel. Thank you. Right, where have we got to then? Gail Cunningham. Please tell me how much white vinegar to 1 cup of distilled water, 7 pH, to get a pH of 4.5 to 5.5. I wouldn't have a clue. Firstly, I've never used white vinegar, and I don't know. Try it. You know, get a pH meter and try it and see how much you need. You know, if your pH goes much too low, then you've used too much. Put some water in. If it doesn't go enough, put a bit more in. It's a trial and error thing. I doubt if there's a fixed thing. Right, Martin McLean. Where is the best place to purchase a Psychopsis? When you find it, tell me. I really want the Mendenhall Hildos. Yeah, I'd love another one too. I lost mine a while ago. I had an albiform as well. I love Psychopsis, but they don't grow well for me. And again, my winters are not conducive for those being strong, healthy plants, because they slow right down. It's a bit too cold at night, and short days. They're tropical plants. They don't work that well in my environment, but I love them. They're gorgeous plants. Right, so best place to purchase? I don't know. I don't know. Burnhams don't sell them as far as I know, not even in their back area where I can sneak stuff out of sometimes. I don't mean that underhandedly. I mean, we do a deal, but yeah, right. And the last question I can't answer because it's not really a question. Sharon Quita, I think that might be pronounced, and it just says, need help with Cattleya division. Don't really know what the question is, I'm afraid. I mean, does it mean you have a Cattleya division that isn't growing very well, or you want to know how to divide a Cattleya? So I'm not going to answer that because I don't really know what the question is. Right, so that's it. Have we gone over the hour? Yes, we have. That can't be the length. Oh, there's the length. I was going to say it says 1 hour 48 minutes, so that's the amount of battery left. Duh. Right, so those are they. We will do another questions and answers in the future. Quite a long gap, I expect, and then we'll give it another go. I like it. I like doing it. I hope you like the format sort of thing. It's just me reading the questions out and having a go at the answers. And when I don't know, I say so. Or I say what is a probable answer, but I would make it clear it's not, when I've done something in here and it's worked or not worked, I can say that, because that's me. But when it's what others have said and things, that's all I can pass. I can just pass that on, sort of thing. So there we go, and I'll see you next time. What I'm up to this week, I don't know. I do have some repotting and some fiddling with mounts to do, and I want to try and get back to doing what I call more proper orchid videos a bit more often. We'll see how we go. And I've also got a couple of bonsai things to do. So there'll be a couple of new videos on the new bonsai channel, which if you didn't know about, the link to the new channel is in the description. And again, as it's a new channel and I'm trying to hit the ground running on that one, going across there and subscribing and perhaps watching a couple of videos running in the background that you're possibly not watching would be very useful, believe it or not. Get those watch hours up and get those subscription numbers up. It'll be very useful. I've got some converts. There's several people on the bonsai channel who've said, now look what you've done, I've bought a tree. Love it. But yes, I have got some bonsai stuff to do. So there we go, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.